Hello and welcome to another episode of Corner Office. I'm Dan Ginden alongside Mayor Nancy Stevens. And Mayor, it's just you and me today.
Just you and me, Dan.
Yes.
I think we can handle it.
I think we can.
It's been a while since it's just been the two of us.
It has been.
Yep.
Yep.
We have a lot to talk about.
We do have a lot to
Yes,
talk
we
about,
do.
and one thing that's going on right now in this month is the budget.
The budget, absolutely. All-consuming, but a great time of year. We're taping on May 2nd, and I'm submitting the budget tomorrow by 5 o'clock to the city clerk. So it's Thursday, May 3rd. Be submitted, and the council will formally accept the recommendation. Well, I shouldn't say accept the recommendation, formally accept the proposal to then refer to finance on Monday, May 7th. They are planning on starting, we all know the process kind of happens the same every year. The budget, my recommended budget, is referred to the finance subcommittee. They're going to start hearings on Wednesday, May 9th. From 6 to 9 on the 9th. We start off with a kind of a budget overview. We always bring in the assessor, who talks about how the tax implications are of that budget. And then we will start with some of the departments that night. Again, continue on Thursday with department head, individual department reviews, and then Friday, May 11th, they will go all day. I believe the council is scheduled from 9 to 4 that day to, again, review a lot of the department budgets that day. They're going to continue on Monday, May 14th, and they have tentatively, they will be done all of the department reviews on Monday the 14th. They've set aside Tuesday the 15th and possibly Wednesday the 16th in the evenings to continue. Depends on, you know, if we have any more issues that need to be resolved. A lot of times when they're doing the individual budget reviews, they may have questions or concerns that we may have to go back and get some additional information. Very little of that last year. I think I think one of the things that's unique about me having been finance chair the year before, the council before I became mayor, I knew all the questions I wanted to ask as finance chair, so I made sure that we submitted as much information ahead of time as we could. So that's the process so far. They are scheduled to the city council is scheduled to hold their public hearing on Monday, May 21st. So I encourage the public to come out, participate in that. If there's any questions or concerns they have regarding the budget, you know, that's the night to really express those concerns. Although we are taping today, I know this isn't going to air until after I submit the budget. So I'll talk a little bit about some specifics of the budget because it'll be out there by the time we air. The budget has come in at 4.53% increase over last year's. Had the comptroller go back and look and find out when we had a budget that was under 5% and how long it has been. As long as he's been comptroller, we've only had one budget that has come in less than 5%. And that was in 2004 when it came in, I believe he said 3.31%. That was the year we had, people will never forget that, the year we laid off 42 and a half people that year. Reduction of 42.5 positions. So while the budget did come in at 3.31%, it was a reaction to a decrease in state aid, and you know, it was what they had to do for the fiscal health of the city. But we are in, I believe, great shape. We really are. I feel very good about this budget. The tax implications from what I've gotten from the assessor are, you know, are very minimal, and I feel very good about this budget that we're submitting. I thank the comptroller, the auditor, and the department heads for really looking at doing things a little differently this year. We've done things, the budget, I don't know if people are familiar that the City Council took up one of the recommendations of the Department of Revenue, Division of Local Services Financial Management Review we had done. And one of those was to adopt what they call an abbreviated budget process. Every year if people watch the budget hearings, they will see the council go through line item by line item on the budget and make recommendations for reductions in specific line items. And then we'll see an influx of transfers throughout the year because the way it's, by voting a line item budget, the council therefore must approve any transfers between the line items. We are going to be doing things a little differently. Each department will have two votes rather than line item votes. They will vote salary items and non-salary items. Therefore, the department heads within their department can transfer money within those two categories so that they have the discretionary flexibility to be able to manage their departments. We have put in one safeguard in that no transfers, although this is all new because it doesn't have to go to the council, I do have to approve the transfers. So that's something new, and it's something that I think adds to the efficiency of government. If you really watch council and you watch the way things operate, it takes an awful lot of time to get a transfer through council. They have to take it at one meeting, they refer it to finance. if they get a meeting in between those 2 meetings, then they can refer it out, and then they can vote on it. So it's a minimum of 4 weeks, but the chances that they get a meeting between one meeting and the next, unless it's already set up, that they can get everybody and get it posted, it's anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to get a transfer taken care of. And when you're talking about something, unexpected things happen and you need some money in that line item, 4 to 6 weeks can be a long time to get that money, especially we've run out of money in fuel maintenance, and fleet maintenance account for maintenance repair of vehicles. Well, all of a sudden you have no money, but you have a car that needs to be repaired, and you can't by law overexpend that line item. So this, I think, is going to be great. The council voted to do it for 1 year with a sunset clause next year. So we'll take a look at how the process went, any concerns that the council has, in terms of oversight and management. We will address it all along. They're going to get monthly transfer reports of transfers that I've approved. So that's great. We'll have an opportunity to kind of work together to see if this is the right process for us. Any change is always a little difficult, but I think having the opportunity to do it this way and look at the process, I think it's an exciting opportunity to do things a little different. A couple other things in the budget that people will see while they're watching the budget hearings is some consolidation. I have tried to, over the last 16 months, look at things and say, why have we done these? How can we make things a little more efficient? How can we have better control and oversight on some things? One of the things is, and I never understood this, is we have fuel accounts within all of our departments. The police department has a fuel account, the fire department, the assessor's office, the building department, all these facilities. But yet we all go down to the garage, the DPW garage, and fill up at the same pumps. So what has happened is then we all have this key. It's a mechanism for keeping track of who's pumping. You have to have your car has to match your chip for the computer, and so it is a monitoring system. But then the bill comes in, fleet maintenance then breaks down the bill and bills the individual departments for their fuel. We still have the opportunity to keep the accountability, who's using the fuel and how much is being used. But that step of charging another department, it really is a paperwork step. It comes to the auditor, the money's transferred into another account, it's charged to that account. Made no sense to me. Plus, when it comes to fuel and making sure that we're using the right amount of fuel and everything, it really is a fleet maintenance thing. So I pulled all the fuel lines out of all the budgets, and our fleet maintenance director will be responsible for all the fuel for all the cars. Same thing happened with electricity, natural gas, and heating oil. Again, these are contracts that John Galoni, our Director of Public Facility, is charged with taking care of. So when they're developing their budgets, they're calling John, the individual departments, calling John and saying, okay, how should we budget for this based on what usage? And it made no sense. Let's just pull them all out, have him in charge of paying all the bills for electricity, natural gas, and heating oil. So we've had some shifts this year. So when we put the budget together to make sure that people can compare apples to apples, because it really does look a lot different, we kind of set it up so there's a front page in each of the budgets that say, okay, if we hadn't changed anything, this is what it would look like. This would be the comparison percentage increase from one year to the next, but this is what it looks like now. So there have been, a few changes just to make sure that everybody understands the budget, because it will look like you have 60% increase in some account because we moved everything there. So I'm really excited about this budget. I'm really glad that we came in with a budget that I was looking at 5%, and I was really pleased when we put everything together to see that it came in at 5.53%. I'm really pleased with that, and I thank the comptroller, the auditor, and the department heads for really working with me, and the council for their initiative to try something a little bit different this year. I think 1 year we can see how it works. So I'm very excited about the process this year and look forward to it. I think it's the one time a year where all the residents can really have the opportunity to see the department heads answer questions about their operations. The council is always good at asking some very good questions, and it's the only opportunity that they have to get all the department heads together, and we talk really about, it's not just about the money, but it's about the vision and what the priorities for the city are. I know what my priorities are, I know what the department heads are. We bring it to the council, and hopefully at the end of it we have a budget that really takes all of those priorities into account and has a budget that we can fund those priorities.
Let's stick with those finance committee meetings when the department heads are in front of the council. Play a little fact or fiction here. Fact or fiction, the city council is out to get the department heads.
Absolutely not.
Right.
The city council, sometimes I think things, and I've done it too as a counselor, you kind of get frustrated and you've been doing this for a lot of hours, it's the end of the third day and you've been 16 hours worth of hearings over 4 days and you're getting a little tired. And it's not that. The council is the appropriating authority. They have every right to ask and get answers to any questions or concerns that they have before they appropriate the money. They are never out. I've never seen a city councilor ever out to get a department head. It's merely doing their job and doing it well. But sometimes, you growing up, it's not what you say, but it's how you say it. I take full responsibility for some things I may not have come out the right way. I know what I was asking, but it's never like that. I think they're doing their job, and I think they do a great job. They really do. Any more fact or fiction?
No, I had to get that out there
Okay.
because there are residents who I think, believe that the councilors are just getting ready to attack, but it's not an attack mode. It's what's best for the city. The
No.
department heads know that.
Right.
Council knows that.
And I think ultimately with the council, it's making sure, looking after the fiscal health of the city.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, I think that's one of the unique positions. Having just been finance chair the year before I was mayor, I've continued with that mentality and took it a step further in that I'm the one that has to now put it together, not just look at what someone else has put together. And I take that very seriously. A lot of decisions we've made over the last 16 months are looking at the long-term fiscal health of the city. One of the things people will see is the increase in health insurance this year. It is not as great as it had been over the years, and that was one of my #1 priorities when I came in was getting control of healthcare costs. We just could not afford a 135% increase in healthcare costs as we had seen over 5 years. We couldn't. We're not seeing a 135% increase in revenues. We're not seeing it in local receipts, nor are we seeing that in local aid. We cannot, as a community, have sustained increases like that in healthcare costs. We are in the middle of negotiations, and we have settled with several units who have accepted a healthcare plan design change. There's now out there in the public, because once the first contract was signed and it was accepted, it has been out there. And I thank the units that have signed on to this healthcare plan design change. I think it's a great change that is really going to help the city and our overall fiscal health going forward. It's a long-term plan. It's not a short-term gain, but a long-term plan. And when we put this together, the #1 priority with putting that plan together was to have a neutral financial impact on the employee and to provide some stability in premiums. And that's exactly what this plan has done. And again, I thank the units that have signed on thus far, and I'm really looking forward to getting the other units settled and moving on, because we can see the difference this year. We're going to be running 2 plans as of now for next year, because we only have some of the units that have signed, and we have seen that the new plan will already save 2%. So, and that's only with partial implementation next year. The full plan design isn't going to be implemented until FY09. That was part of the phasing in of this new plan. So in the first year, with partial implementation and not even half of the people signed on, there's already a 2% savings in that. So I think we're on the right path. We're moving forward. I think, with building up our stabilization account, I think we've done a very good job of making sure that we put ourselves in a good financial position going forward. You never know when something that will devastate the economy, like September 11th did in 2001, and it took a lot of years to come back from that it was economically just devastating for everybody. And we need to be prepared. I hate to say the world that we're in, but we have to be prepared for those sudden and dramatic decreases in the economy. And we have to be in a very good financial position going forward. And we have to be fiscally responsible today with a vision for tomorrow. And I think that we have really positioned ourselves to be that community. You look around, how many communities are going for a Prop 2.5 override? And we haven't, and as long as I'm mayor, we never will, because we have the ability to move forward without having to do that. I'm very concerned, and I know next topic and kind of moving into it. I'm going to help you here.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Segue into our next topic. One of the things that I am very concerned about when preparing the budget is that we are going to be talking about the multi-million dollars that are going to be needed to upgrade our treatment plants, which we're going to be getting into in detail. But that was one of my concerns, is that we look at that and it's not, that doesn't affect the property tax rates, but it affects the sewer rates. And Councilor Yerkes, former Councilor Dick Yerkes, used to have a saying that a dollar is a dollar. It doesn't matter whether the resident or the business is paying the dollar to the water and sewer rates, or whether they're paying it to the property tax rate. It's still that dollar that they have. And I'm very conscious about the fact that this administration has made some decisions moving forward on the treatment plants that's going to affect the sewer rates. So maybe we're keeping the budget at a good level, and I'm trying to consciously keep our spending and being fiscally responsible with our operating budget and our capital budget to make sure that the people, the residents and the businesses have the money available for those increases in the sewer rates. So, and we'll talk about how I'm trying to make sure that that's not as hurtful as it sounds.
Yeah.
But I think we have to make sure that we have everything in place and we understand everything that's going on with the city, and not create the operating budget or the capital budget in a bubble, in a vacuum, without looking at everything else that our residents and our businesses have to pay. You know, we see increased utility rates. We just had a press conference this morning on signing the municipal aggregation plan. Provides an opportunity for our residents and our businesses to save money on their utility costs. I'm trying to make sure that we do all of these things that provide options and competition for our residents. The Verizon cable contract, you know, Comcast had a monopoly. Now we have, you know, another provider in town, and competition can only breed, you know, competitive prices. So I'm really pleased with the way we've moved forward to help our residents on so many fronts, but looking at their overall financial health. So I'm really excited about what's going on.
Well, let's jump right into the wastewater treatment.
Treatment plants, my new favorite subject.
Right. First, can we talk about the unique configuration that Marlboro
Right.
has here?
I think that's one of the things that has been out there that I have been trying to make state and federal lawmakers understand when we've been out there looking for some money, is that Marlboro is in a very unique position in that we have 2 treatment plants. If you look at some of the other communities, Westboro and Shrewsbury share a plant. Now, we have 2 because of what's called the topography of the city. The city goes like this in the middle, and it flows by gravity, and you can't go up over a hill. So we have to have, because of topography, 2 treatment plants. We do have what are called some diversion projects and some pumping stations. People will see, for example, right now, right down by Wayside 4, they'll see this little kind of fenced off area that's being built, and there's cones in the street, barrels in the street right now because we're in the process. That's a pumping station, and it helps pump the waste from one place to another. We have been able to do some pumping and divert some waste that should go to the Westerly wastewater treatment plant to the east, but it involves a lot of these pumping stations. So it makes it for difficult in terms of expenses and just trying to configure that so it works. We do have a couple of those, but those are in kind of scenarios where we needed the capacity. And that's why we are unique in that a community for our size to have 2 treatment plants is absolutely unique in this, at least in this Commonwealth.
Yeah. Let's talk about, I mean, but before we get to where we are right now, talk about the efforts in 2006. That included a trip to Washington for you, did it not?
Yeah, it's actually, we've had 2 trips. Let me go back to when I first took office, because people may not understand that this issue has been out there for years. We had appealed what are called our NIPDES permits, which are the state permits for discharge. About 8 years ago, they came in and wanted us to, for lack of a better word, we use this all the time, and if I start, I'm so used to this that sometimes I'll use terms that I'm used to talking to them about. They wanted us to ratchet down what they called our discharge limit on our phosphorus at both the westerly and the easterly plants. At the time, it was really a proprietary process in order for that to happen, to get to the limit that they wanted us for the phosphorus. The amount of phosphorus that was in the affluent, which is the stuff that comes out of the plant and is put into the river, the amount of phosphorus. And that's because phosphorus breeds all kinds of weed issues and everything within the accepting body of water. So at the time, there was only one company. It was ridiculous because it was a proprietary process. We appealed that, and appealed it for several reasons. Because, first of all, it was a proprietary process. Second of all, because there was no scientific data to say that by ratcheting down that discharge limit, we were in fact going to see the benefits in the water quality of the receiving bodies. It just wasn't there. They could give us no scientific data. It was almost like a random number they came up with. So we as a city for years appealed it. We took it, we were in Superior Court appealing this process with a regulatory agency saying, you have no right to demand that we do something like this and spend, tens of millions of dollars for something that you can give us no scientific data to say this is going to work. So we got to the point, and over the years there have been more processes that have come up in terms of trying to achieve that level. When I came into office, we were kind of coming to a head with the regulatory agencies. They were about to pull our permits and issue new permits with the limits, and once they issued the permits, that was it. You really had to do what they said. And so almost immediately I met with the EPA, because I think what happened was, it was right before I actually took office was the date that they had given they were going to pull the permits. Mm-hmm. And I ended up on a conference call before I even took office with the EPA and DEP saying, listen, I'm taking office in 2 weeks. I don't know enough about this, but yet what you're going to do is going to affect me and my administration. You haven't even given me a chance to work with you to try to come up with an acceptable permit conditions, and how can we move forward on this? So at the time there was a new deputy commissioner with the EPA, Ira Layton, and we started talking, and they pushed the date off and gave me until, I believe it was the end of January. So they said, we'll give you 6 weeks. So literally I got into office on January 2nd, and it was one of the biggest priorities I had, because we're talking, anywhere from $70–80 million. So right away, I started meeting with the Commissioner of Public Works, Ron LaFreniere, and the Assistant Commissioner, Doran Kraus, to kind of get up to speed, to understand what was going on, because that's me. I have to understand what the problem is. I have to understand the history. Don't just give me your recommendation, but give me all the history. So it really was a learning process. And when I laugh now that I say I know so much about wastewater, I really do. I understand where we've been and where we're going. It was decided that we would meet we met several times and came up with what we believed were acceptable permit conditions. We worked with the EPA, we worked with the DEP for them to address our concerns with what they wanted to do with the permit, and they addressed our concerns. So we went back and forth with what we were going to do. One of the major concessions we got on our permits for both the east and the west plant was we got what we call staggered compliance schedule. And that originally, both permits were expiring at the same time. We were going to literally have to be in design and construction on these plants at the exact same time. And not only from a management standpoint was that a nightmare, and I believe you couldn't possibly do it, but from a financial standpoint, boom, we were going to have to be dumping $70–80 million within a short time frame. What we did was agree to a staggered compliance schedule, where we are now in design on the Westerly treatment plant. We are going to, once we are in construction on the Westerly, we will begin design on the Easterly. So we will not be in construction on the plants at any one time, and we have five years to complete everything. Where before it only would have been about 2.5 years to 3 years to complete everything. We have 5 years now to complete everything. That was a major concession on the part of the regulatory agencies in allowing us to do that. So that was huge.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, you mentioned before about the world we live in with financially where we could be strapped if there were ever another kind of attack. But what about those treatment plants? I mean, they're set pretty well. I've been there myself. We've done stories on them, but I mean, you have to be careful when you're trying to change or improve these, because something happens there, you got a serious environmental issue on your hands.
Absolutely. We have been working very hard. We have a great project manager and consulting firm, engineering firm that's doing the design. Jane Madden with CDM, Camp Dresser McGee, is our project manager, and Jane has been wonderful. It's been a real pleasure to work with her and her boss, Ed Nazaratian. And again, working with the Assistant Commissioner of Public Works, they have been fantastic in and we really are working together. I take very seriously the fact that by dropping the appeals and working on these permits, that the city is now on the line for $70 to $80 million. I made that decision. It was not I didn't make it lightly. I did it for a couple of reasons. First of all, we are out of capacity at the West Treatment Plant. We have no additional capacity. The permit only allows you to discharge so many gallons, and we don't have any more capacity at the treatment plant. We have a lot of areas over on the westerly side of the city, which services obviously the westerly treatment plant, that we have companies, great companies over in that area that want to expand and want to grow within our community. Marlboro is a fantastic community, and economic development is one of the things that I take very seriously. We have a great commercial tax base, and that additional commercial tax base allows us to go above and beyond what we could do with just the residential tax base. It allows us to not just provide essential services, but provide great services to our community. And allowing in that commercial area that we have over there, you think about it, Ames, Forest Street, that whole area over there, there's still some areas that are available for development, but we can't. Because we have no sewer capacity. You can't build a building and not have any toilets. It's just basic when it comes to that. That was my main reason for wanting to get this settled once and for all. The second part was it was inevitable that this was going to happen. And if you look back, and if we had done this 8 years ago, the cost would have been so much less to the community. But you know what? I think we did the right thing. I think it did drag on a little further than I would have liked. I think if I had been here earlier and when we were getting close to the capacity issue, I would have tried to make sure that we took care of it before we were actually out of capacity. But it's not a decision I made lightly, because I knew the financial implications in that. And that, I think, is what's driving me to be out there putting Marlboro on the map, so to say, with the regulatory agencies, with the state and federal government, to say, this is basically policy without public participation and mandates that you're not funding. When we built these treatment plants back in the 70s, we got there was construction grants, 90 cents on the dollar. And that's amazing. Now we have low interest loans, which we get 2% interest on. So we're footing the bill for everything here. So it makes it a little difficult. Myself and DPW Commissioner LaFreniere have been out there looking for every grant opportunity that's available. We went last year to Washington, D.C. and applied for what's called a STAG grant. We were successful in getting it into the final appropriations bill. And then when they passed federal government passed the final appropriations bill, they took out all earmarks, not just ours. They wiped them out and said, let's start with a clean slate. So that, I look at it as a positive, considering where we were when we applied for that in March of 2006 and where we are now. I can't imagine how we got it in the first place. Yeah. We applied, we were just down in D.C. a couple of weeks ago, applied for another STAG grant. Congressman McGovern has been fantastic in helping us, and Senators Kerry and Kennedy have been very supportive of our efforts. So we've got that STAG grant out there. We have applied for a state grant called the Moore Grant for $10 million. So I'm looking at what we can do, and I will be out there, anytime I hear about a grant, we will be out there looking for every opportunity to fund these upgrades, because I do understand the financial impact on our residents and businesses. So we'll be out there, pounding the pavement, looking for any and all dollars we can get to help with this program.
Well, this has been a very informative half hour.
That was quick.
It was quick.
So you get me talking and I can't stop. See the passion of wastewater treatment I have now?
Yes.
I know.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Mayor Stevens.
Thank you.
You have been watching Corner Office on WMCT-TV.